To warning no one, believed the galaxy had seen many empires rise and fall, but the Nigma Empire believed they were eternal. Their fleets were vast, their weapons powerful, and their rulers cold and confident. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, without mercy. To them, fear was a tool, and surrender was the only option given to weaker species. Humans were new to this part of the galaxy. They had no ancient empire, no glowing monuments, and no reputation for cruelty. They traded, explored, and stayed mostly quiet. This silence made the Nigma leaders laugh. The High Council of Nigma watched a hologram of a human envoy standing alone. No weapons were visible, no armor, no threat. The human looked calm, almost tired. This was the first warning. Though the Nigma Empire did not understand it yet, the human envoy spoke slowly, choosing simple words. "We do not want war," he said. "We are not weak, but we do not enjoy destruction. If you cross our borders, we will respond." The council chamber filled with low mocking sounds. To the Nigma rulers, this sounded like a threat made from fear. They believed, strong species shouted, and weak ones warned. They ignored the meaning behind the words. Outside the chamber, Nigma generals were already planning. Human space was rich with resources. Their colonies were small and lightly defended, or so the scanners claimed. What the scanners did not show was human history. They did not see burned cities rebuilt stronger. They did not see wars that nearly destroyed the planet. They did not see a species that survived its own worst instincts. The envoy continued. "Humans fight differently," he said. "We adapt, we learn, and we endure. Once we commit, we do not stop." The Nigma High Lord rose from his throne. His voice echoed with confidence. "Your kind has no honor in battle," he said. "You hide behind words and warnings." The human did not raise his voice. He did not threaten or beg. He simply nodded once. "This is your final notice," he said. The transmission ended. The Nigma Council laughed again. They believed the matter was settled. Human space would fall within cycles. Orders were sent across the empire. War fleets began to move. Soldiers prepared for an easy victory. They expected surrender, not resistance. Far away, in human command centers, alarms were silent but minds were busy. No panic spread, no speeches were made for glory, only preparation. Human leaders watched the Nigma fleets approach. They remembered old lessons written in blood. Never underestimate the enemy. Never fight the last war. Factories shifted production. Civilian ships were quietly evacuated. Defense lines were activated in deep space. None of this was broadcast to the galaxy. Humans still looked calm, still quiet, still small. That illusion would soon break. The first Nigma fleet crossed into human territory. No welcome message arrived. No surrender signal appeared. Only empty space and silence. The Nigma Admiral smiled. He believed fear had already won the battle. He did not know that silence was not surrender. It was focus, somewhere deep within human space. A commander whispered, a single order. Begin Phase 1. The war that would redefine the galaxy had started. And the Nigma Empire had just ignored the only warning that could have saved them. WHEN. Silence turned into fear. The first Nigma fleet moved deeper into human space, without resistance. Their scanners showed empty stations and quiet planets. To the Nigma Admiral, this confirmed everything he believed. Humans were running, hiding, and preparing to surrender. The fleet spread out, confident and careless. Ships lowered shields to save power. Weapons stayed cold. Victory felt close and easy, far away. Human commanders watched every move. They did not rush. They did not celebrate. They waited. Humans had learned long ago that patience wins wars. They allowed the enemy to enter deeper. They allowed the enemy to feel safe. This was not weakness. It was a trap. Suddenly Nigma sensors began to fail. Small errors appeared at first. Target data flickered. Communication delays grew longer. The Nigma Admiral frowned. He blamed weak human technology. He ordered the fleet to continue forward. That mistake would cost thousands of lives. Without warning, space itself seemed to bend. Human ships appeared from nothing. They did not arrive in neat formations. They came from every direction. The Nigma fleet reacted too slowly. Human weapons fired instantly, precise, fast, and deadly. No warning shots were given. The first Nigma battleship exploded before shields could rise. Another lost its engines, drifting helplessly. Confusion spread through the fleet. Orders overlapped and failed. Human ships moved like hunters. They attacked weak points. They vanished before return fire could lock. Every move was calculated. The Nigma admiral shouted commands, but human electronic warfare choked their systems. Screens went dark. Target locks broke apart. This was not how wars were supposed to work. The Nigma Empire fought with power and fear. Humans fought with planning and adaptation. Every second made that difference clearer. A Nigma cruiser attempted to ram a human ship. The human vessel did not retreat. At the last moment, it split into multiple drones. The cruiser tore itself apart in the explosion. Fear began to spread. Not the simple fear of death, but the deeper fear of losing control. The Nigma fleet no longer understood the battlefield. Human commanders observed calmly. They adjusted tactics in real time. Losses were measured, not mourned. The mission always came first. Then the second phase began. Human ground defenses activated. Across nearby systems, hidden platforms powered up. Missiles launched from places no scanner had seen. Nigma ships tried to flee, but escape paths collapsed. Human gravity traps locked them in place. Space itself became a prison. The Admiral finally understood the warning. Humans did not fight to intimidate. They fought to end threats forever. And they did not stop once they started. He ordered a full retreat, but it was too late. Human forces closed in from all sides. The battle had already been decided. As the last Nigma command ship was disabled, human channels finally opened. A single calm voice filled the broken fleet. You were warned. The message repeated across every surviving ship. No anger was heard. No pride was shown. Only fact. Across the galaxy, distant empires watched the battlefeeds. They saw Nigma power shattered in minutes. They saw humans fight without hesitation. And they began to understand the truth. Humans were not peaceful because they were weak. They were peaceful because they were controlled. When that control was broken, the result was unstoppable. As wreckage drifted through silent space, human fleets regrouped. This was only the beginning. The Nigma Empire had challenged humanity, and humanity had answered. The broken remains of the first Nigma fleet drifted in human space. Emergency signals echoed through the void. Survivors sent desperate calls for help. For the first time in centuries, the Nigma Empire tasted defeat. News of the disaster reached the Nigma capital quickly. The High Council gathered in silence. No mocking sounds filled the chamber this time, only fear and disbelief. They reviewed the battle data again and again. Human ships outnumbered them only slightly, yet the destruction was overwhelming. This was not luck. The Nigma High Lord clenched, his claws around the throne. He realized something painful. Humans had planned this war long before the first shot. The warning had been real. Still, pride ruled the empire. Admitting fear was forbidden. The council declared the loss a minor setback. They ordered a second, larger invasion. This time, the Nigma would bring everything: super weapons, elite fleets, and veteran commanders. They believed force could erase shame. They believed humans had shown their best already. Human intelligence detected the buildup. Thousands of enemy ships moving together. The largest force the Nigma Empire had ever assembled. The message was clear. Human leaders met in secure chambers. No cheering followed the first victory. They knew what was coming, and they accepted the cost. Civilians were moved deeper into protected systems. Colonies were reinforced or abandoned. Every human understood the stakes. This war was now about survival. As the second Nigma Armada advanced, they moved slowly and carefully, shields fully raised, weapons always ready. But humans had changed the battlefield again. Space lanes were altered. Navigation data became unreliable. Old maps turned useless. The Nigma Armada entered a narrow region of space. Stars burned dimmer here. Signals behaved strangely. This was no accident. Human engineers had reshaped the area. Artificial gravity storms, twisted movement, sensors showed ghosts instead of targets. Reality itself felt hostile. The first shots were fired from extreme distance. Human rail weapons struck with silent force. Entire ships vanished without explosions, simply torn apart. The Nigma fleet returned fire. Their weapons hit empty space. Human ships refused direct battle. They struck, vanished, and struck again. Frustration turned into anger. Anger turned into mistakes. Formations broke. Command chains weakened. Then came the human ground forces. On worlds the Nigma thought unimportant. Militias and soldiers rose together. Farmers, engineers, and medics became defenders. Humans fought for homes, not territory. Every street became a battlefield, every building a fortress. The Nigma advance slowed to a crawl. Captured Nigma soldiers were shocked. They expected torture or execution. Instead, they received food and medical care. This confused them more than cruelty. A human officer spoke to the prisoners. "We fight to stop you, not to become you." Those words spread fear faster than weapons. The Nigma command began to fracture. Some officers questioned the war, others demanded total destruction. Unity began to crack. As losses increased, panic spread through the armada. Human resistance never weakened. Even damaged ships returned to battle. Even wounded soldiers kept fighting. The Nigma High Lord finally understood the truth. Humans were strongest when cornered. Every loss made them more dangerous. Every attack hardened their resolve. The second invasion stalled, then slowly collapsed. Not from one great battle, but from endless pressure across the galaxy. Watchers took notes. They saw a pattern forming. Humans did not seek conquest, but once threatened, they would endure any cost. As the Nigma Empire bled power and pride, a terrible realization spread. Among its leaders, this war could not be won, and humans were just getting started. The Nigma Empire was no longer advancing. It was retreating. Systems once marked for conquest were abandoned. Supply lines broke under constant pressure. Human fleets did not chase blindly. They moved with purpose. Every strike was planned. Every target chosen for impact. Nigma outposts began to go dark. Communication hubs vanished. Fuel depots exploded in silent space. The Empire's strength was being erased piece by piece. For the first time, Nigma citizens felt the war. Trade routes failed. Resources grew scarce. Fear spread faster than any invasion fleet. The High Council issued strict orders. No panic was to be shown. No doubt allowed. But whispers filled the streets anyway. Human forces adapted again. They did not attack worlds directly. They isolated them, cutting power, data, and support. Planets surrendered without a single battle. Local governors chose survival. They opened their gates and asked for mercy. Humans accepted surrender calmly. No mass executions followed. No cities were burned. Only disarmament and control. This mercy shocked the galaxy. The Nigma Empire ruled through fear. Humans ruled through consequence. The difference mattered. Nigma commanders grew desperate. Some disobeyed orders. Others fled their posts. Discipline collapsed. In one desperate move, a Nigma warlord ordered the destruction of a human colony. Civilians were targeted. The act was meant to terrify. The message reached human command within minutes. Silence filled the room. Not shock, not anger. A single order was given. End his command. No speeches followed. No debate occurred. Human fleets converged with terrifying speed. The warlords. The system was sealed. Escape routes vanished. Reinforcements never arrived. The battle was short. Every military target was destroyed. The warlord's flagship was disabled. He was taken alive before a galactic tribunal. The warlord demanded death. He expected hatred. He expected revenge. Instead, a human judge spoke calmly. "You chose this path. You will live with its cost." The sentence was imprisonment, not execution. This moment broke something inside. The Nigma Empire. Fear no longer worked. Cruelty no longer inspired loyalty. The people began to question their rulers. Rebellions ignited across distant systems. Former soldiers refused orders. Workers sabotaged war production. The empire began to tear itself apart. Human intelligence did not create these rebellions. They only protected civilians caught in them. They allowed the empire's own weight to crush it. Patience remained their greatest weapon. The High Lord watched reports pile up. Worlds lost without battles. Fleets surrendering. Power slipping away. He remembered the human warning at last. Not a threat, not a challenge, but a simple statement of fact. As human fleets positioned around the Nigma core worlds, the galaxy held its breath. The hunter that once ruled by fear was trapped, and the final choice now belonged to the Nigma Empire. The Nigma core worlds had never known fear like this. Massive human fleets surrounded their systems, not attacking, just waiting. Every sensor confirmed the truth. Humans could strike at any moment. There would be no defense, no escape. Inside the Grand Council chamber, the Nigma High Lord stood alone. Most of the council seats were empty. Some members had fled. Others had been arrested by their own people. For centuries, the Nigma Empire ruled through domination. They believed fear was strength. They believed mercy was weakness. Now those beliefs were collapsing. The High Lord opened a secure channel to human command. This time, no pride remained in his voice, only exhaustion and regret. "We request negotiations," he said. The words felt heavy. Words the Nigma Empire had never spoken before. Words they once mocked. The human response came quickly. A calm voice, steady and clear. "We are listening, nothing more." Talks began in neutral space. No grand halls, no displays of power, just representatives sitting face to face. The High Lord expected humiliation. He expected threats. He expected demands for surrender and punishment. What he received was something worse. The humans presented evidence. Destroyed colonies, broken treaties, every choice the Nigma Empire had made. This war was avoidable, a human envoy said. "We warned you, you chose to test us. Now you must choose how it ends." The terms were clear. The Nigma Empire would dissolve. Its worlds would become independent systems. Its military would be dismantled. There would be trials. For leaders, for war criminals, but not for civilians. The High Lord realized the truth. Humans were not seeking revenge. They were removing a threat. With precision, he signed the agreement. With trembling hands, in that moment, the Nigma Empire ended. Not with fire, but with a signature. Across the galaxy, the news spread fast. An empire feared for ages had fallen, not to a greater tyrant, but to a species that refused to become one. Human fleets withdrew slowly. They did not occupy worlds. They did not claim territory. They left guardians in aid, not rulers. Former Nigma worlds began to rebuild, free for the first time, learning how to exist without fear. Learning choice. Other empires watched carefully. They reviewed old doctrines. They reconsidered expansion plans. They remembered the warning, do not challenge humans, not because they are cruel, but because they endure, because they adapt. Humans returned to trade routes and exploration. They lowered their weapons, but not their readiness. Never their readiness. Among human commanders, there was no celebration, only quiet reflection. They honored the dead, then moved forward. The galaxy learned a final lesson from this war. Humans did not seek to rule the stars. They only demanded the right to exist in peace and the strength to protect it. Long after the Nigma Empire became history, that story was still told, not as a legend of conquest, but as a warning when humans offer peace. Listen, when they warn you, believe them, because if humanity is forced to fight, they will not stop until the threat is gone, and survival is not guaranteed. The quiet after the storm. Years passed after the fall of the Nigma Empire. The galaxy slowly returned to movement and trade. War scars remained, but fear no longer ruled the stars. Former Nigma worlds chose their own paths. Some formed alliances, some stayed independent. All remembered what unchecked power had cost. Them, human ships were seen less often near the old battle zones. They returned to exploration, to science, to rebuilding what war had damaged. Yet humans were not forgotten. Every major power studied their tactics, their patience, their restraint. In academies across the galaxy, the war was analyzed, not for spectacle, but for understanding. One lesson stood above all others. Humans did not win because they were the strongest. They won because they prepared for loss. They planned for failure, and they refused to break. A new generation of Nigma children grew up hearing the truth. Not propaganda, not heroic lies, but history. They learned how their empire ignored warnings, how pride blinded leaders, how cruelty destroyed loyalty, and how mercy exposed weakness in tyranny. On Earth, monuments were built quietly. No grand statues of conquest, only names, only memories. Families remembered those who never returned. Commanders carried the weight of every decision. Victory brought no joy, only responsibility. Human leaders met often with other species, not to threaten, not to dominate, but to create rules. Borders were respected. Conflicts were mediated early. Warnings were taken seriously. Because no one wanted to repeat the past. Still, deep space remained dangerous. Pirates tested weak systems. Small warlords rose and fell, but none dared to challenge humanity directly. The phrase spread across many worlds, passed quietly between diplomats and generals. If humans warn you, stop and listen. One distant empire ignored this wisdom. They watched human calm and mistook it for softness. They spoke of testing boundaries, of probing defenses. Their advisors showed them old battle records. They showed them the silence before human attacks. They showed them the patience and the cost. The plans were cancelled. The borders remained quiet. A war was avoided without a single shot fired. This was humanity's true legacy. Not destruction, but deterrence. Not fear, but understanding. Humans continued to